You talk a little bit about technology in the book as well. And you are a big fan of project management platforms. You say in the book how, if you're just using just a spreadsheet to manage a project, you're probably missing out on some of the things that you should be thinking of. Which leads me to believe that, like, some people push off investing in a project management application or a platform mainly because they don't want to conform to that platform. They have their way of doing it. But I seem to get the take from you, Phil, that if you adopt a good project management platform, you'll learn from it because it will, if you follow the way it works, it will think of things or help you think of things that you wouldn't
Sure.
normally have thought about on your own. So
Oh,
give me some of
100,
your thoughts on that.
100%. And even towards the end of the book, I mentioned how the company Reich had announced that they had embedded artificial intelligence. So let's say it's a client website
Mm-hmm.
launch.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they can take anonymized data and identify a red flag before you even see it. And you
Right.
might think, yeah, this is totally fine. Or you might be able to identify which people don't see as engaged
Right.
because you look at, for example, how quickly they used to update their tasks and how infrequently they do now, or how much longer it takes them, or do they have a staffing issue? All that becomes impossible to ascertain if you're just doing this through a bunch of disparate emails. Or, I mean, spreadsheets are fine if it's if you and I, hypothetically, if we called this podcast a project, yeah,
Yeah.
something like Reich might have been overkill. But if we
Sure.
got a 6 month long endeavor with 10 different people involved, the idea that it's just going to be a spreadsheet or a Google Doc is insane. And yes, sometimes companies do skimp on not just purchasing the license, but then providing and training to the employees. If I had a nickel gene for every time I showed someone something or someone showed me something, go, how did you do that? But it's I think irresponsible and very misguided for management to assume that people will pick up all these different tchotchkes and their intricacies on their own time. And sometimes towards the end of the project, you've probably seen this happen. You found out about a feature of a tool. And had you known about this at
Yeah.
the beginning, you'd say, oh my gosh, that would have saved us hours and hours. But I've seen consistently how companies will skip on training. There's an example from my previous book about how a VP at a healthcare company, after talking to me about a potential training session, said, you know what, we'll just buy a bunch of copies of Zoom for Dummies and they can learn it on their own. Yeah, if you think that nurses working 14-hour days in the middle of a pandemic are going to come home, kick their shoes off, open a bottle of red, and read Phil Simon's Zoom for Dummies, you're out of your freaking mind.
It's funny that you mentioned that about these applications as well, about taking the time to learn and all this stuff. Don't you agree that most of the mainstream project management applications, there are a bunch of them that are out there, they're mature enough now that they don't need a lot of customizations. I mean, if the majority of the time was spent in just learning how to use the existing application out of the box, it would probably provide the biggest return on investment to anybody running a project.